My friends, there are moments in life when the silence of heaven feels heavier than any word could bear. You've prayed until your voice trembled, hoped until your heart grew thin, and wondered whether the one who formed you had perhaps turned his face away. But tonight, heaven whispers a different truth. God says, "This answer ends your long wait." You see, delay is not denial. The long corridor of waiting has never been a punishment. It has been a preparation. When you thought nothing was happening, roots were growing deep beneath the soil of your soul. The unseen work was more vital than the visible one. The seed of your destiny was not buried, it was planted. And now the season turns, the soil breaks. The first green shoot of God's promise rises to meet the light. We often imagine God's timing as a cruel slowness, but the truth is, His pace is perfect because His love is wise. If He had given you what you asked for when you first asked, it might have destroyed you. Blessings arrive at their appointed hour, not a moment before, because heaven guards your destiny with jealous care. What felt like divine silence was God rearranging the universe in your favor. And so, when He says, "This answer ends your long wait," it is not merely an end, it is a new beginning. The pain that once shaped your prayers will now shape your purpose. The tears you shed in the night were the ink that wrote the testimony you'll carry in the light. You did not wait in vain. Every delay refined your discernment. Every unanswered prayer trained your heart to recognize His voice when it finally came. And now, as He speaks, your spirit knows. It is time. So stand still, not in despair but in reverence. The door that once refused to open is opening not by chance, but by decree. The God who seemed silent has not forgotten. He has only been composing a better ending than you imagine. Your long wait is over, not because you earned it, but because love remembered. And when love remembers, time itself bows to its command. The silence of God was never absence. It was preparation for your appointed moment. When the heavens grow quiet, our hearts begin to tremble. We wonder if our prayers have evaporated into the void, if perhaps our faith has gone unheard. Yet silence, in the language of eternity, is never neglect. It is nurture. God's quiet seasons are not the pauses of indifference, but the pauses of craftsmanship. They are the intervals in which He shapes the unseen foundations of what we are called to become. Think of the artist who steps back from his canvas, not to abandon it, but to study the light, to let the paint dry before the next stroke. So it is with God. When He withholds His voice, it is only because His hands are at work. The silence of heaven does not mean the absence of purpose. It means the shaping of destiny in stillness. Every promise must pass through the slow fire of waiting. It is there that faith is purified, motives are refined, and strength is born. The silence teaches us to love God not for His gifts, but for His presence. It unhooks our hope from circumstance and anchors it in the unchanging character of the one who called us. In the quiet, we learn to see beyond the noise of the world and listen for the whisper of eternity. When the appointed moment finally comes, it carries a weight that hurried answers never could. You find that the silence was not empty. It was pregnant with preparation. You were not being ignored. You were being instructed. The roots that grew in darkness will now sustain the tree that rises in light. And when God finally speaks, you understand why He waited. You see that His silence was mercy, that His timing was love. What once felt like delay reveals itself as divine precision. The long night of unknowing gives birth to a dawn too radiant to have come any sooner. So do not mistake His stillness for absence. The silence of God is the workshop of miracles, the holy interval between the asking and the answering. It is where your spirit grows strong enough to carry the weight of the blessing to come. What you called delay was heaven's way of protecting what you were not yet ready to hold. There are seasons in life when the door you prayed for remains shut, no matter how fervently you knock. You fast, you plead, you believe, and still nothing moves. In those moments, the human heart assumes disappointment, but heaven is quietly at work behind the curtain. What you called delay was not denial, it was protection. God was shielding both you and the promise until the time was safe for them to meet. We often forget that God's blessings are not toys for the unprepared. They are sacred trusts, weights of glory meant for mature hands. To give a crown before the heart is ready to bear it would crush rather than crown. And so, when God delays, He is not withholding goodness. He is ensuring endurance. He waits until your roots are deep enough to hold the height He intends to build. Imagine a child asking for fire. In the hands of one too young, it burns and destroys. But in the hands of one trained and tempered, it gives warmth, light, and life. So it is with divine delay. God never withholds to punish. He withholds to preserve. The dream you thought was dying was merely being protected from premature exposure. During the delay, He works on your heart, teaching patience, shaping humility, and refining wisdom. He allows the longing to stretch your faith until it becomes larger than the very thing you've asked for. Because what matters most to Him is not the blessing in your hand, but the strength of the soul that holds it. And when at last the time comes, when you have been purified by patience and strengthened by surrender, the door opens easily. There is no striving, no force, no fear. You realize the delay was never wasted time. It was divine timing. The waiting room was your training ground. So take comfort in the pauses of heaven. They are not empty gaps in your story, but sacred spaces of preparation. God delays only to deliver something that lasts. When His not yet finally becomes now, you'll understand that every second of waiting was mercy disguised as time. When God speaks, waiting ends, not by time's mercy, but by divine timing fulfilled. There comes a moment when heaven's silence breaks, and the long ache of waiting dissolves into purpose. Not because the calendar has finally aligned, but because the voice of God has declared now. Time itself bends to that word. What seemed impossible for years suddenly unfolds in days, because the one who commands eternity has spoken. When God speaks, the waiting is not simply over, it is transformed. We often believe that the end of delay depends on time's kindness, that if we just wait long enough, things will change. But divine timing does not bow to the passing of minutes. It obeys the rhythm of heaven. When God says, "It is time," the forces that once resisted you lose their power. The doors that stood locked swing open, not because they were forced, but because they have finally recognized the sound of His authority. His voice does what effort never can. It rearranges circumstances, reorders hearts, and redeems wasted years. In a single moment, what felt like endless striving is replaced with effortless grace. When God speaks, delay itself confesses defeat. The river that seemed dry begins to flow again, and the ground that held your tears blooms with promise. You see, divine timing is not about waiting for everything to align. It's about becoming aligned with the one who governs all. The moment your spirit synchronizes with His purpose, what you've been waiting for steps out of eternity into now. It is not time that brings fulfillment. It is obedience meeting divine intention. And when that moment arrives, you will see that no waiting was wasted. Every unanswered prayer, every silent night, was building a testimony you could not have scripted. The years that felt like loss were only setting the stage for acceleration. For when God finally speaks, He redeems time itself. What took years to prepare suddenly blooms in perfect order. So, do not lose heart in the waiting. For when his voice comes, it will not merely change your season. It will end your striving. Time will no longer dictate your destiny, because the one who authored time has declared your moment has come. When God speaks, destiny awakens, and your waiting is gloriously fulfilled.